This is Great Answers Ropecast. Talk about shibari, kimbaku, rope bondage, sexuality, human relationships, and whatever the hell else I want to talk about. This is an adult podcast, not suitable for ears that cannot handle adult topics like communication and educational reform. If that's you, please stop listening now. Otherwise, enjoy. Hello, all you skebes. This is Great Answer, and I am in my sanctum sanctorum, well, my brief respite place here in Philadelphia. You can hear the lovely sounds of the street outside, which actually may be a little bit louder than we want to have, so let's go close the window together. It's called ambiance, motherfuckers. All right, that's better. Now, I am in between events here. Naya and I got to go to Crossroads and enjoyed a really, really fun time there. It was very relaxing and intimate, and the classes that we got to attend and the people we got to share time with was absolutely wonderful. So thank you, Turtle Hill Events, for inviting us out there to present. And at some point I'll talk about my new class that I did there, which is called the Rigor War Chaps. But that'll be a topic for another day. In the meantime, we are, of course, having this podcast brought to you via my sponsors, The Twisted Monk, twistedmonk.com, who is, by the way, hard at work providing gear slingers. And it's a neat, cool little belt attachment gear. Well, it's what it says. It's a place you can sling your gear. That is looks good, and we are having some of them custom made for our Ropecraft dungeon monitors. And we are really excited and glad to have them equipped with such things. And you can see them and more of the stuff that he has, including his, of course, wonderful monk sacks. Oh, yeah, and he also makes rope at twistedmonk.com. And, of course, there's also our other sponsor, who also sells rope, but at a different kind of a pricing mechanism. The people at karmarope.com, KARMAROPE.com, they sell buy the rope for the price that you can afford kind of selling. And that is a novel way, and of course it could never possibly work, which is why they, of course, actually have employees that have an employee that has to work full-time in order to maintain all of the orders and things like that. And Karma Rope has been a big supporter of this podcast. The Karma Rope and Twisted Monk have also been part of providing grants so that we could have a people of color safe space coordinator come to Ropecraft. These are people that do good stuff. So I hope you support them, because they support the podcast, and because outside of the podcast, they also do really, really neat things. I apologize for the lack of microphone control, by the way. I'm using my laptop, but that's what life is like when you're on the road. I could, of course, spend today talking about how, you should come to Ramble Brew, except you can't. Ticket sales are done. Ramble Brew's next weekend. It's going to be fucking amazing. It's our first 2-day brew that there will ever have been. We'll let you know how that goes. I have a facilitation team of amazing people, and there's also going to be an incident response team led by Malachi and Lonnie Angel, which is pretty awesome. I want to give a hat tip to Lizard, by the way, who is one person that helped us put together the plan that we're using at Ramble Brew. But why would I talk about something you can't get tickets to? What I will talk about, though, is things you can get tickets to. For example, there are still tickets available to Ropecraft. You could be one of, at the last counting, there were 320-some people that have registered for Ropecraft. You can go to ropecraft.net to see what it is they registered for and why they think it's worth coming to. I can tell you that it's going to be a fucking amazing place, and our bondage equipment will be custom made for the event, almost all of it. We're also going to have sort of a recreation of the New Orleans Bondage and Leather Enthusiasts Club there. So Boot Black Chair looks amazing. Oh my God, so much good stuff. And also, if you are, thinking, oh man, I wanted to go to Ramble Brew, but I can't do it. Now there's no more Brews left. Well, there are, in fact, 2 more Brews in 2017. First of all, October 21st through the 23rd is the first ever Indianapolis Brew. Okay, and let me see if this shortcut that I created yes, you can go to indy.grew.space. It's indy.grew.space and buy tickets there. And that's going to be a lot of fun, including the after brew, which we've made some special arrangements for. Oh, I should tell you, when you go to there, remember the password for the tickets is GrewIndy, and you should probably cut and paste that from that website. Meanwhile, if you go to columbus.grew.space, you will have the one and the only Grew in Space. Yes, that's right. There will be the final Grew of 2016 will be November 18th through November 20th, and that is at the Columbus Space in Columbus, Ohio. Really looking forward to working with Barrick and Sheba on that. You can again order tickets at columbus.grew.space. Now, I don't actually have an interview for today, which oftentimes, makes people think, well, what's he going to do? Just sit here and talk about events all the day long? And I could sit here and say, well, here's how you organize an event, and here's the interesting things about the people, and it'd all be one big advertisement for these events that I'm doing. Which, hey, it's how I make my living, so I'm justified, right? No, not justified at all, because the Ropecast was around before I started doing this kind of thing for a living, and it is designed to talk about the things you want to talk about. Sometimes it's interviewing people you want me to interview. In this case, I went onto the Twitter feeds, and I said, hey, people ask me questions. Tell me what you would like to hear things about, and tell me what questions you'd like to do. Do an ask me anything kind of thing. And guess what? I got some answers from people. I got some questions, I should say, from people. So we're going to take them in the order in which they were received. The first one is from Chilamond. And Chilamond said that they have always wanted to know how to become any kind of BDSM teacher/speaker. It's kind of like the way, and first of all, obviously this is all my opinion, but it's kind of like the way to become an artist. The way you become an artist is you start making art. The way you become a BDSM speaker and presenter is you start presenting and speaking on BDSM, and it's really a low barrier to entry. I mean, basically, especially with FetLife now, you go into whatever area you're in and you say, hey, I'm going to be giving a talk on how to do dynamic nasal suspensions. And you go to your space and people either show up or they don't. And that's really how it works, all the way from your basic little special interest group in the living room of somebody's house to the great big events that are at New Orleans Crown Plaza Astor Hotel called Ropecraft. Is that basically we just said, hey, we're going to do this thing at this place, and here's what we're going to talk about, and we'd like to know if you want to come. And if people want to come, they'll come. Now, I said it's just like, making art. I can take anything and I can put it out there and I can call it art, and that makes it art. There may be people that argue with me about that. Yes, I see you, person in Chicago who is frothing at the mouth right now because I said that. What I will also acknowledge, though, is that it is not necessarily good art or effective art. So just because you can become a BDSM speaker or presenter does not mean you will become a good one. If you want to become a good one, there are 2 main things I think you need to have. One is you need to have a thorough understanding of whatever topic it is you are talking about. Now, when I say thorough understanding, does not mean complete understanding. It's not too hard to have a thorough understanding of a single column cuff, and you can teach a single column cuff. If you want to do something like teach the way that Wicked Dave teaches performance and stuff like that, or some of the higher end performance type bondage, well, you need to have a whole lot more work on your understanding. But more than that, I think you also need to have an understanding on how to present, how to teach. Go to Toastmasters. Go and get the book The Naked Presenter. Watch presentations on how to present and how to do things like that, because it was interesting. Wicked Dave, apparently, I haven't read the article yet, but apparently he recently talked about how you shouldn't be teaching rope unless you have 10 years or so experience. I don't know if that's exactly what he said. I may be paraphrasing. And I've heard that kind of argument before. It's always interesting in that the qualifications seem to be just slightly less than whatever the person saying has experience in. But the other interesting thing to me is that I think that if that is true, if you should not be teaching rope until you've done 10 years of rope, I think you also should have had 10 years of teaching before you teach, if that's the way it's going to be. There are some people who are naturally good teachers. There are other people who have degrees in how to teach that still can't teach. I think if you really want to be a good BDSM presenter and teacher, what you do is you find the thing you're passionate about and start sharing it with people. That's what you need to do. And if you are sharing it from an authentic place, then you will do that. But I'm not going to use the word authentic. I'm going to use a new word that I learned. It's called veracious. Veracious. And why is veracious better than authentic? Let me tell you. It is because, and this is from an article almost from a past life. I used to be a designer, a web designer, and so I still like to occasionally read articles about design. And this is one from medium.com called But First, What is Design? And talks about veracious design, Veracious. Now, listen to this. At first, you might think it's about being authentic, because the word veracious means truthful. But here's what I think of as the kind of teaching you should do. Veracious, they're talking about design, I'm going to say teaching, is transparent about its origins, positionality, and privilege. It acknowledges that all design or teaching is iterative. It can always be subjected to critique, contextual development, and change. Thus, through its welcoming of iteration, veracious teaching becomes accountable. Now, I said teaching. The author wrote design. I'm not going to pretend like I can pronounce their word. But just going to say it again. Veracious teaching is what I think is important. You need to be transparent about your origins, positionality, and privilege. You acknowledge that everything that you teach is iterative, can be subjected to critique, contextual development, and change. And that way you become accountable and less chance of being culturally appropriative. Yes, that's right. Cultural appropriation, that's another subject. I'm glad nobody asked me for my opinion on cultural appropriation, because that would have been a longer podcast. So anyway, I became a BDSM and teacher and speaker. I can tell you exactly how it happened. I was enthusiastic about rope. I was tying up cunning minks in the Inferno nightclub in Madison, Wisconsin, the rope bondage capital of the world. And we were tying. We were really enjoying it. Both of us were really into each other. And then suddenly we looked up, and everybody in the club was staring at us. There was a circle of people around us. Now, she and I both, being attention whores, immediately said, we need to do podcasts. And she made Polyamory Weekly, and no, we didn't do that. No, we just said, wow, this is kind of cool. So we started performing, and people started asking us if we could teach. Now, both of us were professional teachers and presenters, and we said, sure, we can teach. In fact, I can also say we also went to a particular presentation. I won't say where, and I won't say on what subject, but we came out of that presentation, looked at each other, and said, we could do that better. And so we started doing it. And that's kind of where it went. I will say that a fellow presenter pointed out to me that they found that there was a difference in what I did. And they said that they noticed that what I tended to do was look at what was out there, figure out what was missing, and then try and fill in the gaps. And I didn't realize that I was doing that, but apparently that is, when you look at some of the things that I teach, that is in fact what I do. Things like cigar play, things like the art of receiving blowjobs gracefully, some of the work I do with to build better pieces or improve the consent culture by trying to fill in places where we maybe have missing stairs and stuff like that. that's kind of what I do. So that's how I did it, but it's not how you should necessarily do it. And I will also say, if figure out why you want to do it and what you want to get out of it, and that'll draw more into my last topic answer that I'll do today. But that's an important part. Why do you want to do this? Because if your answer is, because I want everybody to know who I am, or I want to get into events for free, or I want all the pussy, or all the cock, or all the whatever sexual thing you like that I can get, there are probably better ways to get those things. Okay? So, next question is from Cosima. Cosima, I miss you. You're wonderful. And the question was, do you dream about rope? And with all due respect to Philip K. Dick, which is, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I do not dream about rope. I wish I dreamed about rope. I think I maybe did have a dream about rope a while back, but there wasn't. I dream, it's kind of funny, I dream about rope events. I dream about, being at rope events and having things that go wrong or go interestingly or go well. I dream about traveling and things like that. But yeah, I don't dream about rope anymore, which is kind of I would say it's a bad thing, except I still enjoy rope. I just tied up my serva Naya at Crossroads and did a fun anal hook rope bondage needle scene, and it was fucking awesome. So I love rope. I love doing rope. I love having connective rope. I had a great connective rope scene with another person who I don't have permission to say on this podcast, so I won't say except that it was really fun and really awesome to do. So I love rope, but I don't dream about rope. I tend to dream about things like rope events or very strange things. Like I dreamt that, this is kind of dream of rope events. I dreamt that Jeff Mack and I happened to be in the same cabin at a event at Ramblewood. It doesn't really matter which one because there's been lots of them this weekend. And for some reason, I couldn't get my computer alarm just turn off, and it was annoying him and other people and in the cabin, and I was feeling very bad about it because I was, couldn't figure out how to turn off my electronics. So those are the kinds of dreams I have. I will say I do have a Pinterest board. If you look up Great Answer on Pinterest, there is a board of things that is bodies I'd like to tie, and there's also a board of wishful rope. And occasionally those boards get taken down because Pinterest doesn't like boobies or sexual things, and some of them apparently don't qualify as rope, but they qualify as sex for them. Or you can go to my Tumblr, which is Great Answer. Ninja Sex Poodle and Ronin of Love, and things that I reblog there are generally about the things that I wish for. But no, it does not go under my dreams. So, next question. Marceline VQ said they got one in right under the wire, and I admit I was kind of loose on my thing. What's the biggest wall you've hit in your rope, and how did you overcome it? Well, gee, Marceline, I appreciate your vote of confidence in thinking that I overcame my biggest wall that I've hit in my rope. I think wall that I hit in rope. Probably, I never really had trouble with performance stuff because I was able to have my degree in dance and do that. I think maybe the biggest wall, I guess my biggest wall in rope would be not performing. Finding my own enjoyment of rope. Yeah, this is going to be easy, actually. I've always felt pretty inadequate because I am not a huge switch in rope. Okay, I have a hard time enjoying being in rope. I remember I had a wonderful, very, very capable rope top in London tying me up for a session, and I'm the worst bottom in the world. I mean, I was not helpful. I was squirmy and eel-like, and I kept sort of trying to let myself enjoy being in the rope to find that subspace kind of thing. And there was one moment when I was like, oh, wait, I'm feeling something, and then I realized that the rope was being drawn across the palms of my hands. That was the enjoyable part. So I always felt like I was not doing a good job of letting myself enjoy rope. I couldn't find a way to enjoy being in rope. Now, I know you shouldn't, it's like saying, why don't you like licorice? You should like licorice more. But I kind of feel like I should see if there was some way I could enjoy it. And the way that I got past it, or am working on getting past it, I'm not quite past it yet, is to simply acknowledge that for me, rope is sexual. And that's a terrible thing to, it's like, oh my God, you're such a horn dog. How come you just have to have sex with your... Well, you know what? It's because I do. The times that I have enjoyed being in rope have been the times that I've also been being sexually aroused, or it's been done in a sexual context. So, that's, and that's not including performances. I like performing, and sometimes rope is involved in performing, but I don't, that's not the end result. If I'm going to be in rope, and the reason I know this is because some of my partners who I'm sexually involved with have started doing rope with me, including my servant Naya, who does it from a submissive place, believe it or not, and it's kind of an interesting little twist. She has an entire class on that. But it was not being ashamed of the fact that in order to enjoy being in rope, I have a sexual component to it, and not being ashamed of that desire and that enjoyment. And so that's one wall that I'm still working to get past. Now, I'm not saying I'm 100% past it, because there's also the awareness that as a rope top, if I get tied up in a dungeon, it's going to make people go, wait, what's going on over there? And, my fun little experience at the Synergy Dungeon with Naya and the Blonde, who were sort of co-tying me up and stimulating me and things like that, was a good example of that. It was also a little bit of performative stuff there. But that's been one thing, is learning how to do that. And I'm trying to think if there's any other walls that I've hit with my rope. Not terribly much. I mean, I've hit plateaus in tying, certainly. But there's always something new. Oh, I know one. So here's a way, and this ties into my final question too, but I'll just do it. I hit a plateau in rope where I was not really getting anything new out of the classes that were offered at the events that I was going to, at least not the rope classes. I had sort of taken all of the classes, and I was having a hard time actually doing more than going through the motions. I wasn't pushing. My practice was practice, not deliberate practice, which there's a difference between those things. And sketchnoting is what got me out of that. Sketchnoting is a different kind of practice. It's a way of taking notes and drawing, and it's a way of coming at a topic, even one that you've already, may have taken 1,000 times. And by using sketch notes, I was able to sort of see it from a different perspective and use maybe a different part of my brain a different part of my skills to go into it. And that kind of made everything fresh and new. That and grooves, the unconference model. That was definitely been something that's kept things fresh and kept me learning new things. Okay, speaking of learning new things, Prof. Cedar, Marceline, by the way, when I answer my final question today, you will also get more on that. Prof. Cedar says, what are the best tutorials for those starting to tie that don't have local groups or are hesitant to attend? Well, this is great. I get to talk about two of my favorite organizations. First of all, for free videos, free rope bondage videos that are done very, very well and are very good for basic bondage, go to twistedmonk.com. I'm not just saying that because he is a sponsor of the podcast. I'm saying it because he has always offered really high quality, good basic bondage skills out there. So that's one that is really, really good. Another one that I obviously really think is the best source of and most complete source of all kink and sex education is the Kink Academy. KinkAcademy.com. You've had me talk about them before. Here's the thing. Go to KinkAcademy.com while you're hearing this podcast, and for the next 3 days, to the 23rd, they're having their 9th anniversary sale. And you can actually get, I think it's 3 months for $49, something like that. Anyway, it's a really, it works out to $9 a month. And if you know how much people pay for individual lessons and things like that, I'll give you an example. For Ropecraft, when we offered the 2-hour private lessons to raise money for flood relief, for 2 hours, $200. And that's a fair price for a lesson. So imagine having to only spend $9 to have access to a lot of the same instructors that you have. Murphy Blue, people like Lee Harrington, myself, Darian O'Ray. Those are just rope bondage people. Jay Wiseman is in there. Aaron Houdini's in there. Danorama's in there. I mean, you have all kinds of rope and other kinds of kinks too. So kinkacademy.com, especially right now, if you are before, what month is it? September 23rd. This is a great time to go on there. They also have a lot of free videos, and they're adding on more free videos. So those are the best free places I can think of, and very, very affordable. The best books for bondage, in my opinion, are Lee Harrington's Shibari You Can Use and More Shibari You Can Use, especially since they've been revised. Those are my top ones. And then also Chanta Rose's Bondage for Sex, Volume 1. I don't know if they're going to do Volume 2, but that Volume 1 is a fucking amazing resource. Another online resource that is also really good is crash-restraint.com. That's Topologist's site, and he has a very specific curriculum of tying. Now, it's not going to be your traditional Kinbaku. It's very much a functional, and he has things like his chest loading TK, which is pretty complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it is rock star. Really, really good. Now, there's lots of other places online that you can learn about bondage, but those are the ones that come to mind for my favorite. And since they're available online, it's pretty easy to get a hold of them. If you also are interested in just getting Tie 'em Up and Fuck 'em and Rope Connection and Flow DVD, shameless plug, I sell those DVDs myself, so you can always go to greatanswer.com and look up where you can buy those, or just contact me. All right. Prof. Cedar had another question. What are the best TED Talks that have helped you become a better rigger, kinkster, presenter, an alternative learning source? Now, you limited it to TED Talks, which I appreciate you narrowing the scope of things, but I will say there are a lot of people who have problems with TED Talks, and there's good reasons why they have problems with TED Talks, so I won't annoy that. But I actually went onto TED and ended up going and putting out my favorite ones. And I wonder if there's a way to share this with people. I don't really see if there is. My profile can make it and become out there. I guess I need to worry about that later on. So what I'll do is I will read off my favorite talks, and if I can find, Gray-Dancer is my thing. So I'm trying to see if they have a way that I can share things like that, but it doesn't look like it's there. I will try and fill it out. If you look for Gray-Dancer, if they have profiles, in the meantime, I'll just read you what my favorite talks are off the top of my head. Okay, and these are just some of them. They have definitely changed the way that I do things. Big one, Ken Robinson. So Ken Robinson talks about a lot of things with education. Like, do schools kill creativity? TLDR, yes, they do. And we should fix the way that we teach. And also, changing education paradigms is one he did with RSA Create. And those are two things that I usually bring up when people say, we need to standardize the way rope education goes, and we need to teach them this way, because most of the time when people are saying that, this is why you need to learn about teaching and not just rope. It's because most of the ways that we teach in our culture are created to make people that work in factories. And as a very great rope maker once said, you don't tie like a machine. Why do you want rope that's made by one? Right, Moko? That's a little free plug for mokojute.com. Also, whenever you have somebody bring up that whole stupid 10,000 hour rule, which, by the way, the guy who invented the 10,000 hour rule or who did the research for it has said, please stop using that rule. You're using it wrong. I'm looking at you, Malcolm Gladwell. So if you do use that 10,000 hour rule analogy and you haven't watched the Josh Kaufman, it was a TED Talk. Look at Josh Kaufman and the How to Learn Anything on YouTube. And it is linked on my own YouTube thing. But basically, you don't need to have 10,000 hours to learn how to do something good enough to do it. And that includes good enough to teach it. Because there's also a lot of research that says that if you learn something, the best way to lock it in is to teach it. And the best way to teach it well is to do it when you have just learned it recently, because then you remember what it's like to learn it recently, as opposed to having someone who has been doing it for ages and ages and doesn't necessarily remember all the steps that they took to do it. So, I also really like John Bohannon's Dance versus PowerPoint, A Modest Proposal. And that, again, goes into alternative methods of teaching and stuff like this. It is a way to get people involved rather than standing up there and lecturing. Kelly McGonigal's How to Make Stress Your Friend has been a big help. And again, my final question is here will relate to that. But yeah, learning how to deal with stress, Kelly McGonigal. Sendil Mullainathan, Solving Social Problems with a Nudge. He's one of the co-authors of the book Scarcity, Why Having Too Little Can Mean So Much. And I really found that to be useful to rethink the way that I look at things. Among other things, you're wondering, what does this have to do? This is economics. What does this have to do with rope? Well, I'll tell you what it has to do with rope. I think that we create an atmosphere of scarcity when we tell people you should not play with anyone who doesn't have a whole lot of really impressive picks and a long list of people and references. What that makes people want to do is they think, oh my God, I'm new to the rope scene. If I want to play with anyone, I need to get a long list of references and have a whole bunch of pictures of wild and crazy stuff before people will play with me. So they go out and they try and do it, and they try and do it, and they try and do it, and they say yes to a whole lot of things, possibly even things they maybe shouldn't at the time, because we teach them that unless they have that thing, they are not worth playing with, which makes the idea of play as a scarce resource when it should not be. So that's a small rant for a larger topic. Okay. Next two talks are from Brene Brown. And Brene Brown, especially The Power of Vulnerability, which dates all the way back to 2010. Her books are even better. One of the free videos on King Academy is me and Melina and Callie, Princess Callie, talking about dominant vulnerability. And vulnerability and courting vulnerability is a good way to build resilience. And that's one of the main things that are needed out there. Nothing scares me more than the rigger who comes up and says, I've done lots of suspensions and never had anything go wrong. Because that person does not know how they will react when things do go wrong. So give me a rigger with a few war stories who can say, yeah, shit happened. And here's how I dealt with it, and here's how I made sure it didn't have a big a chance of it happening again. But if it does, I know how to deal with it. That's the person I want to talk to. And finally, the most valuable TED Talk I've ever had and I've ever heard of, and that it feeds into all of the ways that I look at the Ropecast and everything else, is back in 2009. I'm going to probably butcher her name, which I'm very sad about. Chimamanda Adichie. And she did a TED Talk on the danger of a single story. And anyone who has heard about my work with the IRT and with Rashomon and with giving different perspectives in the rope world knows that this is something I definitely believe in. We cannot have a single person telling the story, even if it's in a podcast. We need to have more. So those are the things that are there. All right. Lacnesia, Ness. I love Ness. He's a wonderful person. And brings up lots of interesting things on Twitter, and is awesome in person as well, and asked, what's a sex ed topic you seriously nerd out over? Now, that was an interesting one to try and approach, because, like I said, my way of teaching is to look at what's missing and try and fill in the gaps, and that's not always the thing that I nerd out over. For example, the IRT, the Incident Response Team process. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, go to the website consent.rocks and you'll see more about that. But here's the thing. I don't really nerd out over the consent and things like that. I just, we started running events and I'm like, I want to have a good place for people. It was a necessity. What are the things that I nerd out over? I nerd out over the writing of erotica, although I don't read it very much. I nerd out over relationship. When you say nerd out over, it's like things that you talk a lot about, and I think have to be excited that you could sit there and talk forever and ever and ever about. And it's interesting in that there are topics that I really enjoy talking forever and ever and ever about. That's a hard one, especially when you narrow it down to sex ed. I love talking about the mechanics of orgasm, the physiological effects of them, and the fact that they're so different in everybody, regardless of biological sex and equipment and things like that. The fact you can have brain orgasms and you can have clitoral orgasms, and vaginal orgasms, and scrotal orgasms, and there's all those different kinds of things. I tend to geek out a lot about the state of sex ed in our country and cultural mores about it. Oh, and certainly hypocrisy in the way sex ed is done. Sex work. That's one. That's one I was trying to think of that I know I can definitely nerd out over. The work that's being done by people like Mistress Matisse and many others, SWAP, which is an organization that is looking to increase awareness in sex workers' rights. Laura Agustin on Twitter is a really great resource for learning more about that. As we work to try and decriminalize these kinds of things, this is something that I definitely support, and that is someone who has done many different varieties of sex work, and yes, I'm including all kinds of sex work there during my life. And I definitely don't have the same experiences that they do. It doesn't qualify me to talk about them, but it definitely puts me in a position where I say, yeah, I can see why this is an important topic, and I think it deserves more attention. So sex work is one. Another one that, I just had it in my head too, and now I'm losing it. But anyway, there's lots of different subjects that I can geek out about and talk passionately about. The weird part is that when you really want me to talk passionately about something, it tends to have to do, decolonialization. That's a new one that I'm kind of working on, and that's different than diversity. To decolonize something is a methodology that I'm still wrapping my head around. But basically, it's looking at a situation, saying what kinds of colonial influences dictate the way that this is organized, and then trying to take them away with the realization that, I'm never going to be able to take away all of it. You can't be unbiased. There is no such thing. There's just trying to be aware of your biases and doing your best to counter them as best. For example, with the Person of Color Safe Space grant that was created for Ropecraft, guess what I had to do with that in terms of the decision process? Nothing. Well, I was a conduit. I was the one who could say, yes, we should have this. I asked 3 committee members who are not me and not involved with me in any way other than professional capacities to be the judges, and I got them the applications. They looked at the applications. They gave me a recommendation, and I said, okay, that was it. That's exactly my part. I listened to people, and I put it in there. That, to some extent, can remove my bias as a cis-het-presenting white male of somewhat above average means in our culture. So that meant that that could take away some of the biases. And by the way, in case you're wondering, Do Not Go Gently is the one who won the grant, and we're excited to have her come out and make this work. So that's one way you can do it. I'm interested in learning more about decolonizing things. I'm interested in new pedagogical methods. I'm also interested in VR porn. I think that's going to be an up-and-coming thing, and that's something that'll be interesting. But yeah, other than that, I tend to geek out about, things that are more about infrastructure, organizations and models and things like that, as opposed to the nuts and bolts. Although I do have a 3D clitoris that Monkey is Me printed out for me, and I'll be picking up in Chicago sometime. All right. And the last one, the final question. My dear friend Riza Amnesia, who is, the level of wonderful. I can tell you, Riza Amnesia is one of the first kinksters I met in the community when I went to the my very first International Mr. Leather. I believe that's where I met her, along with the other Chicago crowd that was around with Cunning Minx, and that's where I bought my first rope, nylon from Rainbow Rope. That's how far back I go with Riza Amnesia. And she asked me, Sorry, they asked me. Sorry about that, Risa. How to avoid burnout. And like Marceline, I have to say thank you for the compliment and the vote of confidence in thinking that I actually have avoided burnout. When in fact, I have actually burned out more than once. And I might have been on the cusp of one now, but that's part of the secret. So first of all, one of the things that helped me avoid burnout was being able to be lucky enough to come up with the GRU concept. Because when I go to an event that takes a lot out of me from teaching or presenting or things like that, when I go to a GRU and I see people really exercise their passion and really get into what they're doing, and I'm not the one who's having to feed it, and I'm not dispensing knowledge, I'm just helping hold a space, that recharges me. Okay? I mean, it also takes a lot out of me in a different way, but that definitely recharges me in terms of kink, getting to see people come up with new things and do stuff. That's one thing. It's just finding new avenues of learning and watching other people do their passion. It's contagious, and it reminds me why I do this kind of thing. Now, on the other hand, if, like another friend of mine who recently said that they do a whole lot of work volunteering for events, and they were reading about other people's experience at the events where they volunteered at and going like, well, I'm not having enough fun. How come I'm not doing these wild and crazy scenes? I'm working the event and I'm going back to the hotel room because I'm tired. I'm doing it wrong. And I think that reframing what you get out of events is one of those things. I used to feel that way about GRUs. I'd be like, hey, I'm at this GRU and I'm not having wild and crazy sexy scenes in the evening because I'm tired. And what does that mean? And I just sort of reframed it in that what I get out of events is a different kind of goal. My goal for Ropecraft is not to have an event where I can watch lots of naked people tying each other up. That's a side benefit, but it's not the goal. My goal for Ropecraft is not to make the biggest rope event ever, or make money off of rope events, or it's not to do anything except to create a space where I can see people enjoying. That's my goal. So that's what I get out of it, and knowing that that's what I'm going to get out of it helps me focus on that. So sort of reframing before I go to an event, I'm like, what do I want to get out of this event? What is going to be the parameters of success for me? For the Crossroads, it was I want to give good classes. I want to have some relaxing and intimate time with Naya, and whatever that looked like. It didn't have to look what it originally looked like it was going to look like. Was just us sitting out under the full moon, enjoying a cigar, and having a little gentle, very vanilla-esque sex there in the moonlight. I mean, that was what it was going to be. Now, as it happened, we also got a fun needle scene, and we had met up with some other people that, again, I don't have permission to speak about in the Ropecast, but let me just say, big smiles all around. So we got bonuses, but if I just come out of the event with just having given the classes and had some quiet time with Naya, that would have been satisfying, and that's one way to help avoid burnout, is stop trying to keep up with other people, and don't give in to the fear of not doing it right. You're entitled to have your own needs and boundaries and get what you need out of a thing. There are some events that I'm not going to go to in 2017 because I recognize not that they're bad events, they're fine events. They're just not events that are feeding me what I need out of kink. So, not going to try that. Another big thing about avoiding burnout is not to avoid it. I'm kind of in the midst of that right now. We left Madison, I think it was August 23rd, and started driving, and we've gone to 1, 2, 3 events, and we have a 4th event this weekend. And, there were events that we had some major role in some way, shape, or form. And we've also been doing, planning on another big event. So, there's a lot of time on the road, and it's prime for burnout. Absolutely prime for burnout. Now, when I'm traveling, I do some things that sort of feed my soul. Yesterday, Naya and I went for a walk. We had pizza that was really, not a healthy meal. It was a very enjoyable meal. And then we wandered through this awesome bookstore here in Philadelphia, used bookstore. And I mean, it is your epitome. If Neil Gaiman and China Miéville were writing about a used bookstore, it would be this bookstore. Wall to wall, ceiling to floor, nothing but books. And did we have sex in the stacks? No, but that would be a great topic for a anthology, Allison Tyler, or Rachel Kramer Russell, Sex in the Stacks, or just call it Stacked. Yeah, that's it. But anyway, I digress. No, we just spent the time there relaxing and then came home. And did we get right back to work? No, we actually took a nap. Our bodies said, you need to take naps. So we took a nap and then got up and started working again. So it's basically listening to our bodies, taking the time to do the things that we need and not trying to force it all out there. And recognizing that burnout will happen. It's okay to burn out. It's okay to say, you know what, I've had it, I'm done, I need to do something else. I'm going to take up knitting with fiberglass. No idea what that is. But do something else. Just, don't think you have to be 100% all the time. Let things ebb and flow and have faith that it will come back. Some kind of passion for something will come back. And it'll be unexpected. I was getting burned out in rope back in 2008, I think. Just wasn't really feeling it. And I decided I wanted to try and find something else I could be as passionate about rope, or as passionate about as I was about rope. And I started trying out new things. I was trying out cutting, and I was trying out needles, and I was trying out new ways of single-tailing and things like that. Trying to really focus and learn on what it was, find something that would really speak to me. But I wasn't finding it. I wasn't finding it in any of the places I was looking. What I found it in was in a place I wasn't looking. I just, on the spur of the moment, thought, hey, for a scene, I want to bring a cigar into it and freak out my girlfriend because she knows that I don't smoke anything. And so I'll do that. And so I learned how to smoke a cigar, and it turned out that learning to smoke the cigar is what became a passion of mine. So if I'd gone out, when I went out looking for it, I couldn't find it, but by just letting things happen and relaxing and not trying to become some brand new thing, I ended up finding that thing. So I'd say just let yourself burn out. Understand it's okay. Let yourself, say, hey, I'm tired of this. I've done too much of this. I need a break. Take the break. It'll be there when you come back. Promise. All right. So I think that answers all the questions. Thank you all for the topics. If you have more topics, you can always email me, greatanswer@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter as Great Answer. I'm on FetLife as Great Answer. Apparently, I'm even on TED.com as a user, Gray Dancer. So feel free to contact me in whatever way you like. Hey, check out the Ropecraft channel on YouTube. We've put up a bunch of videos linking with examples of performances and talks and things like that from people who are going to be at Ropecraft in New Orleans, and you can find out more about that event at ropecraft.net. Please visit our sponsors, twistedmonk.com and karmarope.com, for equipment, custom-dyed rope, high-quality stuff, or good quality rope that is at a price you can afford, just ripped off the spool and sent to you in its natural form as God intended. And I will, meanwhile, probably see some of you at the upcoming Ramble Brew, and I will also have more podcast interviews while we're there. Hey, if you have something, if you're going to be at Ramble Brew and you have something you want to talk about, just find me. I'll be one of the facilitators, and I will whip out my phone, stick it in your face, and we will talk. So hopefully that will make some really interesting rope cast stuff coming up in the future. In the meantime, from the wilds of Philadelphia, pre-Ramble Brew, this is Great Answer signing off. That's a good rope.